in case of emergency, break the glass and do this. What is this? It's a secret that many wealthy families know that most Americans do not. So, in today's video, I want to share with you what that is. Having been a financial advisor for high net worth families for over 20 years, let's jump in, let's talk about it, and then discuss when it might make sense for you to think about doing something like this. Okay, so what do the rich families know that most of us don't? And that is opening an account outside of the United States doesn't have to be really complex or expensive, and it certainly doesn't have to be illegal or illicit. So let's go to a CNBC article. It's titled More Rich Americans Are Opening Swiss Bank Accounts, Fearing U.S. Risk. And the key points from this article is Swiss banks say they've seen a surge in interest and businesses from high net worth Americans opening investment accounts in recent months. Switzerland's neutral politics, stable economy, strong currency, and reliable legal system are a draw for clients. CNBC rightfully goes on to say, while opening a Swiss bank account decades ago may have carried a trace of illegal tax evasion, illicit tax evasion, today it's highly regulated, more widespread, and complete with tax forms and reporting. Okay. And CNBC interviewed some bankers, and the general philosophy here was many Americans are looking to diversify away from the dollar, which they believe will weaken even further under the weight of soaring U.S. debt. We've already seen that. You know, the dollar was almost at parity with the euro. In other words, $1 would almost buy 1 euro at the beginning of the year. The value of the dollar, unfortunately, has collapsed. And now it's quite a it's a distance from parity. The article goes on to say opening a Swiss bank account is fairly straightforward, but of course it has to comply with strict U.S. disclosure laws. And so the question a lot of people have is it difficult to open a Swiss account? And the article addresses this. While major U.S. banks cannot open Swiss accounts for clients, most have a referral relationship with a handful of Swiss companies that are registered with the SEC, and they're allowed to accept U.S. investors. Okay, so does this make sense? You know, one of the things the article said was people are fearful about the collapsing dollar. You know, if you're worried about that risk, there are ways to protect yourself from a falling US dollar, and you don't have to have a Swiss bank account to do that, right? The simplest thing is, you know, if you wanted to buy euros, if you think the US dollar is going to fall relative to euros, one thing is you could simply just have an investment in companies where the majority of their business is done in euros, where the majority of their sales are done in euros, and even U.S. multinational companies, large Fortune 500 companies, they're so global now that they will benefit when they're bringing in dollars from goods that they've sold in foreign countries. So if you have a large company, let's say a company that sells U.S. consumer staples, you know, toothpaste, detergent, but they're multinational and they're selling that overseas. Well, if they're selling it, let's say half of their business comes from Europe, that's one way you're going to benefit by that U.S. company selling. You know, they're manufacturing in Europe, maybe they're selling in Europe, so they're going to benefit. So there's easy ways to diversify. And then there's a little more complicated ways to get those investments. But if you have your account at a place like Schwab or Fidelity, or you're working with a fiduciary financial advisor, you can let them know, hey, I want to diversify away from the US dollar. I'm concerned that the dollar is going to fall. Now, most people, most of us are planning on retiring in the United States. And if that's you, you know, you're going to be spending dollars, US dollars. So there's less of a need for you to do that versus maybe a friend, a neighbor, or relative is planning on retiring in Europe or other parts of the country. Then they might want to start building up, having some exposure to that foreign currency in case the dollar does weaken versus that. But you don't need a Swiss bank account. in order to protect yourself from currency, the US dollar weakening. There's lots of ways to do that. Um, B, one of the reasons that people do like to have a foreign account is just as a safety plan. That is probably for most of us. This isn't financial advice. I don't know your situation, but that's likely going to be overkill. If you have to worry about your Schwab account, if you have to worry about a Fidelity account, if you have to worry about Vanguard, any of the big custodians, boy, we've got some big problems at that point. But it can give you some peace of mind knowing that while it's it's relatively easy to open a bank account in a country like, Switzerland, it's typically costly and there's a lot of friction involved. So, yes, your local bank, if you're with one of the, large US banks, can probably give you a referral to a Swiss bank, where you could do business. It's probably gonna take some time. It's probably gonna be more complicated than what you think. Also, your tax forms that you're gonna get from the, Swiss bank account, those might come later than what you're used to from a US account, so it could complicate things in ways that you're not thinking about. So, if you're nervous, if you're feeling like break the glass, and you wanna protect yourself, again, and this isn't financial advice, we're all different, but I think the best thing that we can do to protect ourselves is, 1, just be job ready. Make sure that we have the skills where, um, hopefully we won't be the one that's laid off if there are layoffs going on in our company. And if we are unfortunate, and there's lots of people that are very skilled that, unfortunately were at the wrong place at the wrong time and find themselves laid off. If you find yourself in that situation where you have the skills where it's relatively simple and quick to pick up another job that's the right match for you. And if you think you might be at risk at that, one of the likely a better use of your time, break glass in case of emergency, a better use of your time might be thinking about skilling up and getting that skill. And one of the things that's right now in demand that I think is very quickly becoming a job requirement in many fields is having at least a foundation, a basic understanding of how to use artificial intelligence. So if you're behind the curve there, maybe think about picking up a couple courses for that. The next thing is so that's a good offense. The next thing is a good defense, which would be having an emergency fund, as simple as that is. And often it's the simplest things that are the best match to protect ourselves from scary times. And that is just have a good rainy day fund. And the older we are, the more months worth of runway we want to have in that account. If you like this video, I know that you're going to like my free weekly newsletter. You can sign up for it here. Or if you want to watch my next video, the YouTube algorithm says this is the perfect next video specifically for you to watch of my videos. Thanks for watching this one. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.